Mark Shanahan has one of the best gigs in Westport. He's the artistic director of the Westport Country Playhouse. Mark has a great theatrical background, a writer, director, on stage, all over the country, radio studios as well. As an actor, Mark has appeared on and off Broadway and a ton of regional theaters. And that includes our own Playhouse, where he acted in Journey's End, David Copperfield, directed by Joanne Woodward, Sedition, Tryst, and Around the World in 80 Days, plus many script-in-hand readings. And just as importantly, for anybody who's seen a show, a concert, a talk, Pinkalicious, or any other event since Mark took over as artistic director, he brings a sense of joy to the historic theater. Mark welcomes audiences back enthusiastically, and personally, it's like you're walking into his backyard barbecue. And that means a lot, and I think audiences have responded as well. So Mark, welcome to 06880, the podcast.
Thank you, Dan. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate the invite.
So let's pull back the curtain. And what's your first memory of the Westport Country Playhouse?
Well, I had been here. I don't know the show. I had been here when I was a boy. My parents took me. I can't remember the show, as often happens with the things that are sort of nascent in your head. But I also remember the Playhouse from before the renovation, and had done work up in Bridgeport at the Playhouse there, had done work in Fairfield, the Fairfield Theater Company, and had always driven by the Playhouse. But when I arrived as an actor with Journey's End, it was this very strange experience because I immediately, having worked at theaters all around the country, I had this very visceral connection to the space itself. And I don't mean to over-romanticize, but I will over-romanticize what I do. Any chance I get, why not? But that place for a lot of actors means an awful lot because you are part of a lineage and you are part of the history of the place. And I think that means something to a lot of the performers who come to work on that stage. And I had that experience the moment I arrived there, absolutely.
We talked a while ago, and you said you sort of look at the way actors act when they're on stage and how they treat the stage. Is it with reverence or is it just another gig?
Well, I get a kick out of it because, I mean, particularly there's a lot of incredible Broadway talent that lives right here, but we're also only, 45 miles from Times Square. You pick up the phone, you ask amazing actors, and they do come. And it's always amazing to me. The reputation of the place is great. People know that it is a warm place to play in that room. It's the audience is welcoming, and actors feel great on it. But I do watch. When we invite actors, I do watch them first walk on that stage and look out in the house and look to the balcony, and you feel it's a good bit of architecture. You feel when you're on the stage, sort of eye level with the front row of the balcony. I like to sit in the balcony a lot, and it helps keep your chin up. And the actors really take in the whole place, and you can feel it. When I first arrived, and Joanne Woodward was the artistic director, the first day we had tech, Joanne took me backstage and showed me the little square piece of wood by the doors on each side of the stage as you enter from backstage. And she said, "Now stand right here and put both feet here." And I dined out on this story. If I've told you, I'm sorry. But I put my both feet there, and she said, "Now, just think of all those great names on the posters on the wall." And she listed them all, rat-a-tat-a-tat, not the least of which is hers, by the way. And she said, "Now, these are the floorboards from the original Playhouse. And now you've stood on the same stage as all those amazing actors, and they will guide you through the next 2 hours if you let them." And it really kind of got me. So I love to tell that to all the actors when we invite them up. And even for a script in hand, you tell them that. And I stand backstage and I watch them come up when places are called. And I love to watch the actors stop for that second, put their both feet, they close their eyes, and they keep walking. And the great actors really, really do have a reverence for the place. And it gives me such a great joy to see them part of that experience and kind of hold that so special.
I did a moth reading at the Playhouse. And for me to be on that stage was just magical. It really was. So
Yeah.
what got you back here? I mean, of all the things you've done, why the Westport Country Playhouse?
I appreciate the question. The funny thing is, in many ways, I never left. I've enjoyed being a freelance theater maker, and I've been very lucky that I've been able to do that with my life. I know how lucky I am. I mean, some jobs are just jobs, and some are great jobs, but you just got to keep moving usually. And I've had a lot of amazing experiences, but there are certain places that call to you, and happily they had kept inviting me back. First as an actor, and then as a director, and now even writer. I've done stuff. So being invited back to this family of people who was running the place when I first got there, and then over the years with every different artistic director that I've worked for, I've learned so much from each of them. I've seen the place grow and change as all theaters do. But after doing a number of plays as an actor, Annie Keefe had always been so good to me, and she had started the great Script in Hand series, and we still packed them in with Script in Hand, and she had me come up and do several a year for years. I loved coming up and doing that. Script in Hand is like, for an actor, it's like the gymnasium. You need an audience to figure out how to do this work. And we would do great plays and have great actors come up, and you rehearse for a day and then you throw it out there. And over the years, I got to play incredible roles that maybe I would never have gotten to play. And so I got to go out there, and then eventually she handed over the series to me to run, which I was so grateful for. Still doing that. And then last year, they approached me and asked me if I'd be interested in stepping into the role of artistic director. And I got to be honest with you, Dan, that was not something I was ever looking for necessarily. I know some people who that's their goal, and I think they're well suited for it too. I think for this theater, I can be well suited to it because I have a love for this theater and a love for the history of it. I love for the actors who come here, a love for the possibilities of the room itself, what it can do. And so I was proud to step in and try and usher in this next chapter. But that's been my history with the place. That's why I say for all these years, I've been going around and going to theaters around the country and even abroad. But I was always coming back to this place.
So what does an artistic director do?
That's a great question. It's a very good question.
Do you know?
A lot more than I thought. No. The role of artistic director is really to help guide and shape the choices and the mission of the theater artistically. What's on stage? What kind of stories? Who we call on to tell those stories? How we do it? And keep an eye on the health of the place financially, of course, but also on being allowed to grow over the course. It also means helping the staff figure out how to be on top of that as well. So it's not just choosing the plays, it's also how we all come together and sort of guide that principle, everyone on the staff doing it. So on the one hand, you want to feel like you're a leader artistically, but it really is a great group effort that I'm part of.
So what does that mean day to day? I'm sure there's no typical day, but...
Yeah, there really isn't. I hate to say it.
But what do you do all day?
Well, we have probably 8,000 meetings a day, it seems, about everything from our calendar to our finances to our marketing to casting to trying to figure out what shows are. I still have to find time to read 1 million plays and answer 1 million emails and people who send me things and to sort of cultivate all those relationships still. But along the way, we're also trying to figure out what else will come into the theater and try to have meetings about what our special events are that we're going to have, how to figure out how to load those things in and out of the building with my production manager, how to budget for what we think we can do and deal with our union crews and things like that for all the things that we will eventually put on stage, how to look forward with an eye towards not only the budget, but the artistic life as well. So any given number, the good news is for me is next Tuesday, I've told the staff over there, I was like, you're not going to see me as much because I'm about to step into rehearsal hall from morning till late afternoon. And on breaks, I'll run back into the theater and check in with everybody. But I get the joy of walking back into a rehearsal hall with actors and making a play, which I can't tell you, that makes me happy. So
I certainly can tell. What's the show?
Well, we are kicking off our season, our first season back in a while. We put together a lot of shorter runs of plays and concerts and readings. And all year long, we've had some real fun and success with a lot of presented events and things we made in-house. But we're back to making a full season. We're calling it a Season of Laughter. It's all comedies that will be put together, but I think they're pretty good, sophisticated comedies. And the first one on on the line is a 4-person comedy called The 39 Steps, which is a loving homage to the Alfred Hitchcock movie from 1935. I was lucky enough to be part of the New York production, and then I've directed it around the country at different theaters over the years. And I think we've assembled an incredible cast and an incredible design team. And it's a very joyous play with 4 actors playing all the roles that are found in the movie, and a lot of nods to all the great Hitchcock movies over the years as well.
So this is very different. After 90 plus years of shows in the summer, being a summer theater, now the shows are in the fall and winter.
Yeah. Well, you can look at it a number of ways. It's been a tricky thing to figure out. And when the board invited me on in my current role, they had made, I think, a pretty wise decision after a lot of consultation with people in the community, but also with, also together, trying to figure out how to pivot and make sure that the theater remained healthy. And they were looking at the fact that the demographics around here had changed, that a lot of people had moved up during COVID. There are a lot of families, people here who want to find things to do during the winter. But I also feel for all the people who would go to Florida or something who wonder what their subscription means too. But the truth is, we've become a year-round theater instead of just a summer theater. And that's been really interesting because we didn't know if it would work. So we are now a hybrid model of a presenting house where we present works that we have brought in, things that have been made from outside the theater, like the RGB show about the life of Ruth Bader Ginsburg that came. But also we've made, wasn't it great? Yeah,
fascinating.
People loved it too. I was so pleased about that. And then things that we made even last summer, we made a concert called They Made It a Musical, celebrating the history of Broadway. And so we have had in-house and presented works, all of that hopefully supporting financially the idea of getting back to making a real run of shows for three-week runs for a season, a proper season to get back. So yeah, our season now goes from October through April, but there has been something on stage almost every week of the year at the Playhouse all year long. So we have more going on, I think, than ever before in its history.
And you came on at a perilous time.
Yeah.
I mean, the Playhouse was within days of possibly going bankrupt. The audiences had been leaving, hemorrhaging. The shows had not been connecting with a lot of audiences. Did you have any doubts or hesitation when they said, come on to this sinking ship?
Well, I'll try to be relentlessly optimistic and say there were a lot of factors that were making it difficult to produce theater in that moment, a lot. But the truth is, among them, COVID, obviously. I mean, we shut theaters down. It is still sometimes unthinkable as I look over my shoulder and try and figure out where we came from. The thought that the work that I and my colleagues do is about bringing people together in a room, and that was the thing that we were not able to do, and theaters everywhere were shut. It's still an incredibly hard thing to get my head around. Yeah. And it was heartbreaking, and that made it took a real financial toll on the theater and all theaters around the country. I'm not saying we're special. As the culture changes and we figure out what kind of plays can be served, and that is always the case with theaters. There's always, but even amidst what you're calling a financial nightmare too, last summer there was a production of Dial M for Murder on the stage that did incredibly well. So there was still the obvious statement being made that people will come. A number of shows had to be canceled because there wasn't the finances to do them following COVID and everything that the theater had gone through. But there was I'm going to call it like a fire that was still that was being fanned, that flame, that I knew that people still wanted to come to the Westport Country Playhouse. So while I was and still am always nervous of like, oh my gosh, how are we going to do this? How are we going to keep them coming? How do we stay open? We're still not out of the woods by any means, even though we're doing better. All theaters are struggling, and the performing arts is a very hard thing to keep going. But when it's going well, people recognize how valuable it is to them. I think that flame that we've been fanning can continue to grow. And any trepidation I usually have about what are we going to do is just me staring at the ceiling in the middle of the night, as I've always done, of trying to figure out how to make plays. But I think that we're on the right track.
So what's the value of theater?
Well, I mean, I've been joking a lot and telling people, I feel like it's more than ever, it seems like it's the last non-downloadable thing we can do. And it's more even than when I was younger. We're all staring at our phones. We feel disconnected. It's a very culturally divisive time. And inside that theater, happened twice last week, I stood in the wings and I watched the audience coming together, and I watched incredible talent on the stage. And you see people, I don't want to, this sounds like it's so hokey, right? But it's a very heartening thing. You see people coming together, creating an audience. They didn't know, a lot of them, each other that morning, that they were going to pick up the phone and ask for tickets and create an audience. And then they get there and there's this feeling of togetherness. The theater opens up hearts and minds. We know that empathy is like a muscle. It needs to be exercised. And that's what the theater can do. This theater has a long history. I stand there on the porch, people tell me about their grandparents and their parents taking them. And now I've seen people with kids in tow. And you think, well, we got to make it so that they'll be the grandparents someday, bringing them to this place. I like the idea of continuity, even amongst the change that we make, you know.
And you are reaching out to, I mean, there's so many COVID people who've moved into Westport, many of whom probably didn't even know that there's a playhouse.
Yeah.
How do you reach them, and what are you hearing from them?
That's a good question, because part of it is people like you helping let people know that we're there. We used to be a much larger staff. This past year, we've been a staff of 8.
Wow.
Arguably, maybe a volunteer more, and so but that's doing everything from payroll to planning to the air conditioning to, I mean, it's a mammoth undertaking, yeah. And there's barely time to figure it all out. So we are constantly always out there asking people to be our best advocates, to be our ambassadors and spread the word. There are a lot of new people who are coming, and part of that is if you do some programming that will bring them in, they show up and they have said, we didn't even know this was here. Twice this year we did evenings, and I didn't know I would go, of Taylor Swift music for kids. We had 13-year-olds in the audience screaming their heads off. I never heard the place so loud. To Taylor Swift songs, my own daughter included. And on the way out, parents were saying, thanks for doing this. We'd never been here before. And if we offer family-friendly fare this fall, which we are, I'm hoping that a kid, when the parent says, we're going to go to that playhouse and see, they go, oh yeah, I go there. I'll go there. Yeah. And we'll, make it sort of a happy tradition of it. So.
You're going to get Taylor Swift?
Yeah, if you can help me get to her, sure. Yeah. I don't know if she'll play a 500-plus seat house, but I think it would be a good night.
So that's a good question. What are you, if you could, if you had a wish list and could really put anything on, what would it be? What sort of stuff and who and?
Well, the funny thing is we do have a wish list and we can put anything on. It's kind of crazy. I mean, last year when they handed over the calendar and they said, well, let's sit here and figure out what we want to do in this year. We want to make sure that everything we put on our stage, we'll never have that opportunity again. That was a full year of, let's see what the audience wants to respond to. And we want to make sure that everything we put on our stage feels playhouse. And it's a word that seems funny, but we use it a lot. What feels playhouse? What feels like it belongs in this space, on this stage? And people who are tied to the theater, it's a no-brainer to have great big talent like Audra McDonald and Bernadette Peters and Mandy Patinkin and Patti LuPone.
Judy Collins.
Yeah, and Judy Collins was an incredible night. I loved that night. It was great. But then also Kevin Bacon, who is an actor who loves the theater and film, came with his band, the Bacon Brothers, and he's tied to the theater and the performing arts too. So it felt right, even though that was a rock and roll night too. These things feel like they're playhouse. When I'm very partial to making sure we also tell stories and have theater on our stage, and it's not just in our script in hands. It's in bringing last fall a Sherlock Carol to the stage for our holiday show, the RGB show. Pirates of Penzance did really well in June. So we've been able to try all these different things out. But the funny thing is, to answer your question more appropriately, as you look forward and we create a season, I get to choose the plays that I think this audience would love. And I want it to be smart, good stuff. I want it to be forward-thinking, even though it feels like the Playhouse, like it belongs there and has always been there. Plays that feel like they would be part of the history of the Playhouse. And so I am getting the chance to do exactly what you're asking, which is What do you want to put on stage? It's what I'm doing. It's what we have ahead of us in this season.
Is there anything that's not Playhouse? Anything you would say, well, this really isn't us?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I don't want to name certain names, but things come to us and say, what about this? And I go, I don't think that our audience would want that. And sometimes it's stuff that I would like, I'd go to.
Mm-hmm.
But that, we need to think about the health and the joy of the theater. And I don't, and so we're very particular and careful and hoping that everything will appeal. Now, there are a lot of different audiences that we serve. And as I say, you know, a play for an older audience that's rooted in history might not be good for young kids, but then we have a family-friendly show that the older audience might not go to. There are different backgrounds, there's different cultures, different stories, and so we want to make sure that everyone always feels welcome. And so we want to make sure that when we put as much as we have on stage, not everything is for everyone. I get that. You can't please all the people all the time, and I hear that, and it keeps me up at night. But we want to make sure that there is something for everyone to feel welcome to.
Have you gotten those older audiences back, the ones who felt that the Playhouse had sort of not deserted them, but wasn't connecting with them any longer?
I think we could still do more work on that, to be honest with you. Part of that is earning the trust of people to say, we want to train you to come. People stopped coming to the theater. We got very comfortable staying at home during COVID. And if we give them a reason, we make a good event, they do come and they say, hey, that was great. I love that. I'm going to come again, and make it a practice. So the more we make people feel welcome, I think the more we invite them back and the more we get word out there, I think the more they will come. You know, the old saying, if you build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. We hear from a lot of people who are happy that they're coming back, but there are a lot of people out there who still aren't venturing out necessarily to go to the performing arts, and we'll keep knocking on their door until they tell us stop calling. But I think when they come, they're feeling welcome.
So you get the feedback from the audiences. What about performers? Do you get feedback from them?
That's the greatest joy of my job. I mean, this weekend when we had our gala, and Kristen Chenoweth and Lilias White and Raul Esparza and Laura Benanti and Norm Lewis and Deborah Monk, and I mean the list, it was one extraordinary performer after another. The thing that made me happiest about that was on the way out the door as they were leaving, they said, I had a great time here. I love being on that stage. This place is amazing, and we were treated well while we were here. And those are, you know, titans. I got to stay. It's like being in the I stood in the wings, watched the show. All the actors stayed in the wings watching the other actors on stage. And for me, it felt like being in the dugout of the 27 Yankees. You're watching actors take class from each other, basically. And I see that a lot at the Playhouse and have over the years. Actors love coming there, but there's a great community of actors. I always say, like, we like to collect and then add, like keep a core group. A lot of our audience loves seeing some actors come back that they know. So they're Playhouse favorites. And then we add new people to the mix too. That's true of designers as well, who come to the Playhouse. And I'm very happy when the actors are happy, when the designers are happy, and they feel that this was a good place to make a play.
I've been downstairs.
Yeah.
I've been to the green room. I've seen that amazing wall with the headshots of 90 years of actors. That to me is one of the coolest things about the Playhouse.
It is.
What are some of the highlights for you of the Playhouse and of what you do there? Coolest parts of your job?
Well, you know, that green room that you're talking about, which really sits almost directly under the stage, a little off to the side, is the best room in the world. It has a little kitchen, has a table, has a bunch of couches. But a lot of friendships have been forged in that room by great artists. And a lot of ideas have been hatched. It's a fun thing to sit while you're pretending to cut a bagel or read your email and listen to actors go, you know what play we should do? Or you know what? And then sometimes they pitch it to the Playhouse where they go out and you see they're going to do it. Or, you know, it'd be a good role for you. I'm going to send you a script. And the kind of creativity that happens in there, it's like, you know, actors and artists, they can't help themselves when they get together to think about what a good possibility of the next show is. And that room in particular is the best room to be in.
So you're always
I told you I'd romanticize it.
Oh my God. Always,
I love it.
Always creating, always thinking. When you came in, what was your short-term goal and what are your long-term goals now?
The short-term goal was to get back to next Tuesday when I step into rehearsal for the first time on creating a play for a full season. We needed to get through this year with presented works and plays that we made that we didn't have a full budget for the way we have in the past, and make sure that all of those things welcome the audience back in and got them prepared for this season, for our current crop of plays, which, if you don't mind my plugging them now.
Absolutely.
Thank you. I'm selling you a ticket, right? Is the 39 Steps to start with. We bring back a Sherlock Carol for another run in December, which is something that I wrote and directed that is played in New York and in London and around the world. We have 25 productions this year, but the Playhouse has the original New York company and design team coming up to do it. And all those actors said, they're all Playhouse veterans, said, yes, in a minute I'll be there. And it sold out last year. We didn't know if people would come in December, and it sold out. So we're bringing it back because we were asked to by a lot of people this year. It's a fun combination of Sherlock Holmes and Christmas Carol put together. And it's selling really well already. I'm so pleased. And it means a lot to me that people will come at the holidays to the Playhouse and make that a tradition too.
A lot of things to do.
Yeah, there's a lot of things taking people's attention at that time of year. And as a writer and director, I have nowhere to hide. If I wrote it and then I directed, I can't say, well, the director did a bad job. So I'm pleased people like it. And then we have a Broadway concert series in January. We have a fantastic play called Native Gardens in February, which is, I think, speaks to a lot of people in the suburbs. It's about two wonderful sets of neighbors who argue over the division in their yard and start behaving very badly. But it's also a very hopeful and very smart play about division and how we build bridges too. It's really smart. And then a final play called Theater People, which we did as a script and hand reading. And on the way out the door, everyone kept saying, when are you going to do that play? And you couldn't help but listen to that laughter and go, why wouldn't we want to fill this theater with that laughter? It's a fun play about Broadway people coming to a Newport mansion for a weekend with a lot of misunderstandings. And it's also a very moving play. So I think we have joy but smart plays coming ahead, and that's the thing I'm focused on. And if we make this season work and we can bring people in routinely and they see that we're doing good work, we're going to be able to keep doing that and even expand the seasons in the future and do bigger plays. And we have to stay within our financial means right now. It's very expensive to make a play at the Playhouse. And we need the support of every individual and small business and anyone who wants to put their name on something to come in and try and help us put these plays on our stage. And the more we get that done, I think the long-term goal is to do more shows, do bigger shows, and be able to expand what we're doing.
And then will you continue the one-offs? Those?
I think it's worked so wonderfully, and it does help offset the cost to make our plays. And it's also one-night events or exercise people coming to the Playhouse for something they might not have come to see otherwise. And, that's a great way of getting people to feel welcome.
So the Playhouse is back. It's really an integral part of Westport again. Do you consider yourself a Westporter?
A great part of that's a great question, actually, because then it begs the question, how do you define that? I do a reverse commute. I'm a New Yorker born and bred, but a large part of my creative life for 20 years has been devoted to that theater and to then this community, the friends that I've made, to the people who live here who let me stay at their house, who let me have dinner with them, who say, how can I help? And when I first started coming here to work at the Playhouse, my wife, we weren't married yet, we were renting a place down and subletting our apartment out there down by Campo Beach. And I'd never been happier in that little house. I was like, this is amazing. And so this community where I spent most of my time every day is very dear to me in that regard. So in that respect, there's a part of me that definitely belongs to your zip code. Absolutely. And I do love it here.
And where do you hang out when you're not at the Playhouse?
Well, if I'd like to think that they let me out the door sometimes, but I often realize I got there in the morning and I didn't leave till well after the show was over, and I never left the building. But I do have my favorite restaurants downtown and hole in the walls and things like that I do love to eat. Well, I mean, I feel bad if
come on,
but Little Barn takes a lot of my money. That's good. I love that place. I get fish and chips up the road on the post road. I know where to get a good bagel, but also I have the Black Duck has seen a lot of late nights too. There's a lot of places I love, and I probably shouldn't tell you the stories of those nights too.
That is great. You are a wonderful storyteller.
You know what? Wait. You know what I love also? And so it's outside. Up a little further is the Driftwood Sandwich Shop.
Yep.
Up in Southport.
Southport.
I love it. I don't know. It just makes me happy. And also, just get a bagel and go to Campo Beach and just sit there. It's good for the soul.
Yeah. No, it really is. So you've been telling stories on stage, you've been writing them, you've been directing them. Anything under the radar? Anything you'd like to sort of let us know about Mark Shanahan that's we haven't talked about yet?
You mean more specific? Is there?
Yeah. Any stories? Any tales?
Well, the truth of the matter. Yeah, I'll tell you. So I work in the theater, and you very kindly say, "Oh, you get up there and you make people feel welcome." When I do those curtain speeches, I feel, even doing this, I feel very nervous about those kinds of things. You put me in a costume, give me a script, and give me some rehearsal, I can take a stage and I feel very happy about it. But that's the part of the job where I was like most nervous, like kind of leaving the creative part behind and all of that. And in fact, when I was a kid, a lot of people who want to be in the theater, they know it from the time they were a kid. That was not me. I begged out of the school play in 8th grade because I thought that seems terrifying. I don't want to get up there and do that. And I remember telling a teacher at my grade school, there's a lot going on and I can't be in the play and all that. And I was very mysterious, and the teacher was like, "Oh, okay." He came, and I had like 3 lines. He didn't give me a role. And then my mother came home from a parent-teacher, and she said, "What's going on that you couldn't be in the play?" And I said, "Oh, I didn't want to be in the play." And she went, "I get it. Don't worry. I get it." And it took a couple of good teachers who saw potential in me in high school and afterwards to say, "Give it a shot. Get up there." And so my tremendous stage fright is still with me, but it's a thing that kind of fuels and keeps me motivated. And I see that with a lot of actors, actually. But it didn't come easy to me to get into the theater. But I loved storytelling. I love stories. I'd just tell you the 39 steps. This is more than you want to know, right? When my dad was ill when I was a kid, when I was about 10 years old, he took me to see the 39 steps. And The Lady Vanishes down at Theater 80 St. Mark's as a double feature on a rainy Saturday afternoon. And it was a scary time in my family. And there was this great thriller on the screen. And it was dark and rainy in that day. And I felt simultaneously terrified, but also very safe.
Wow.
And all those years later, I got to play Richard Hannay. And briefly, and during the Broadway run, I covered it and then got to step into it. And then I've directed it everywhere. And to bring that story here, you don't really need much of a psychiatrist to say, I love sharing the things I love because I think good storytelling can save you.
Wow.
And I do believe that when people come see it, they'll feel good about it. And that's the only thing I know how to do.
And you do it well. And that story, I mean, the story that you told reminds me of James Earl Jones, who just recently died, who grew up as a stutterer.
Yeah.
He was terrified of speaking. A teacher got him onto the stage, and then he comes and he not only has a career, but was on the Playhouse stage.
One of the most extraordinary careers, actually. Yeah.
And the world premiere at the Westport Country Playhouse
of Thurgood.
Thurgood.
Did you see it?
I did.
Oh, man, wasn't he great? I saw it too.
That's the magic of the Westport Country Playhouse. It continues.
Do you remember your first show there at the Playhouse?
I don't know what it was, but I was there as a child, a 5-year-old. You know, that smell, the cramped lobby, the air conditioning. It was I couldn't put it into words, but 5 years old, you discover the magic of the theater.
And it stayed with you.
Stayed with me and stayed with you, Mark Shanahan, the artistic director of Westport Country Playhouse. Thank you for sharing this, and go see 39 Steps, which debuts.
Our first performance is October 22nd.
Plenty of time to get tickets.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, man. I appreciate it.
Oh, it's been great.
Thanks.